Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. We're going to get started soon. In the meantime, we are going to have a poll that if you want to take it, would be great to have your feedback on. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. We just have a poll up that you can take while we wait. We're just going to be a couple more minutes, and then we'll get started. All right, we're gonna give folks another minute and then we're gonna start. So if you haven't taken the poll already, please get your responses in now. All right, I'm going to close the poll. We'll talk about the poll results, at least reference them later on right before the Q&A. So I'm going to end it now. Okay, great. So thank you for joining us this afternoon to hear about 3 projects that are transforming Chicago's riverfronts. I'm Christina Harris, Director of Land Use and Planning here at the Metropolitan Planning Council, and I will be serving as your host for this virtual presentation. MPC is a planning and policy organization dedicated to creating a Chicago region that is livable and vibrant through initiatives and programs like Great Rivers Chicago. Since the release of Our Great Rivers in 2016, a vision document to transform the Chicago River system, MPC has been providing assistance and support to community and nonprofit organizations to help improve the rivers in their neighborhoods. These projects could not have been accomplished without funding from the Chicago Community Trust, which has been a vocal advocate of this work from its inception. Today, you will see and hear about progress that has occurred in 3 different parts of the river system, along the Des Plaines, the Chicago South Branch, and Calumet rivers, grounded in the overall goal of advancing the Our Great Rivers vision. Speakers today include Chloe Guerin-Sands, Manager of Health Equity from the Metropolitan Planning Council. Chloe has worked on Great Rivers Chicago since its inception, helping to develop the Our Great Rivers vision. Chloe will provide an overview of the plan's vision and its goals. Mary Rose Pavkovic, Managing Director from the Chicago Public Art Group. Mary Rose will present a project called the Northwest Portage Walking Museum. Grace Chan, Executive Director from the Coalition for a Better Chinese American Community. Grace will present a project called Great Rivers Chinatown. Brenda Dixon, Founder and President of the Major Taylor Trail Keepers. Brenda will present the Major Taylor Trail Riverfront Improvement Project. The speakers will be joined by a couple of participants who will provide some additional information and help answer questions. They include Cora Marquez, Impact Coordinator from the Chicago Community Trust, who will provide an overview of the goals of the Our Great Rivers Grant Program, and Heather Miller, the Executive Director of the American Indian Center, a partner with the Chicago Public Art Group on the Northwest Portage Walking Museum project. A couple of housekeeping items before we get started. This event is being recorded, and as each speaker presents, please use the Q&A box to put any and all questions. We will have time at the end to answer your questions, and we'll be taking questions directly from the Q&A box, not the chat, so don't put them in the chat box. And now, I'm going to turn it over to Chloe to tell us more about Our Great Rivers.
Great, thank you, Christina. Good afternoon, everyone. Again, I'm Chloe Guerin-Sands with the Metropolitan Planning Council. You can all see I have my little guy here with me, so please, excuse him or enjoy him if he screams while I'm talking. So in 2016, the Metropolitan Planning Council, along with our partners, Friends of the Chicago River, the Chicago Metropolitan Agency for Planning, and many other partners, including the mayor's office in the city of Chicago, came together to put together a vision around our great rivers. So this was, if you go to the next slide, Christina. Thank you. It's a vision for all 3 of Chicago's major river systems. So everyone knows that we have a beautiful lakefront, that we put a lot of time and investment to understanding that lakefront as an asset. We, as the partners, thought, hey, there isn't really a shared vision for all of these rivers that we have that have all of this industrial history, all of this natural history. Can we pull together a vision for what Chicagoans want to see for their riverfronts? So next slide. So we did a very large public process where we heard from over 6,000 people, almost every single zip code in the city, all but one, about what people want to see out of the rivers. What is their current experience with the rivers? What do they want to see in the future? And we came up with 3 overarching pillar ideas that were, people want to see their rivers be more inviting, recreationally inviting. People want to see the rivers be more thriving and living for both humans and, animals, birds, fish, etc. And people want to continue to see the rivers be a driver for economic productivity in our region as they have been. So next slide. So for each one of these pillars, we came up with goals that we wanted to reach by 2020, 2030, and 2040. So I won't go through all of them. You can see them on the slide, but to give you a taste for inviting, this is things like getting people down to the riverfront to engage in activities, having riverfront trails in a continuous way across all of our rivers, access for all kinds of different folks, branding and wayfinding. Next slide. For productive, this is really, again, about looking at how our rivers support our economy. So looking at integrating transit into our river system. So water taxi and other kinds of transit opportunities on our river system. Local jobs and tourism, how we're tying those in. Iconic riverfront destinations, use of water, right? So next slide. And then living, of course, taking care of our river system, really caring about the natural areas that are on land connected to our river system, coordinating around water quality, you know, just working with all of these partners to really balance all three of these pillars. So part of the team of really getting these goals met has been the Chicago Community Trust, who's been a wonderful funder and partner, who put together a funding opportunity for community organizations to really start addressing these concerns and these three pillars in their neighborhoods. So I'm going to pass it over to Cora, who's going to talk about more of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chloe, and thank you to your little man, who's adorable. Hi, everyone. My name is Cora Marquez. I'm with the Chicago Community Trust. I've been there for about 6 years, and one of the projects I've helped manage is our Great Rivers. So I'd love to give you a little overview. Christina, we can go to the next one. Great. So since 2016, the Trust had funded projects aligned with the Our Great Rivers vision. To date, there are about 19 community-led initiatives that have formed around the river system. 18 of the 26 goals are currently in progress, which Chloe was talking about previously. We are also happy to share that we have over 130 organizational and institutional partners involved, a few of which you'll be hearing from today. If you look to the map to your right, I will call out some of the projects and organizations that will speak. So it might be hard to see, but number 2, that is the location of the Northwest Portage Walking Museum. Number 5 is the location of Great Rivers Chinatown, and number 6 is location of Mayor Taylor Trail. Thank you everyone for joining. I'm so honored to be here with you all. I will now pass it over to Mary Rose, the Managing Director of the Chicago Public Art Group, to talk about the Northwest Portage Walking Museum.
Thank you, Cora. Thank you, Chicago Community Trust, Friends of the River, and Metropolitan Planning Council for inviting me to speak about the Northwest Portage Walking Museum. As Cora said, I'm the Managing Director of Chicago Public Art Group and a board member of the Portage Park Neighborhood Association. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. The Northwest Portage Walking Museum is a 9-mile outdoor museum that connects the North Branch of the Chicago River to the Des Plaines River along Irving Park Road. It's a collaborative proposal for a multifaceted learning experience that is deeply rooted in the natural environment and cultural histories of Chicago, anchored by 2 major public artworks with interpretive exhibits along the route between the 2 rivers. Our goals are to promote natural history, visibility of Indigenous peoples, past and present, and appreciation of neighborhood histories. This idea was born out of Portage Park Neighborhood Association, a community organization that wanted to tell the history of the Northwest side of Chicago and connect communities. Next slide, please. It was after attending one of MPC's Our Great Rivers workshops that this idea became a realization. MPC assigned Michael Mancarini from the National Park Service to help our group create our vision and goals. We partnered with the American Indian Center and other community organizations to form a steering committee. Next slide, please. These are the lead partners of the steering committee, and all represent community organizations along the route. Next slide, please. And these are the organizations listed here that have supported, partnered with, and/or are part of our steering committee. For instance, Horner Park Advisory Council helped getting community support for the Coil Mound, and Chicago Park District helped with the permitting process. I will talk about these other organizations throughout my presentation. Next slide, please. Here are the list of our project milestones that I'll speak about in the following slides. After receiving the first year of Our Great Rivers grant from the Searle Funds through Chicago Community Trust, the American Indian Center, Portage Park Neighborhood Association, and Chicago Public Art Group sent out an RFQ for artists for the 2 public art sites at each river. We selected Santiago X, an indigenous futurist artist, a citizen of the Coushatta tribe of Louisiana, who are mound builders, and the indigenous Chamorro from the island of Guam. Through a collaborative effort with the American Indian Center youth and community, Santiago designed 2 effigy mounds, the Serpent Mound in Schiller Woods near the Des Plaines River, and the Coil Mound near the North Branch of the Chicago River in Horner Park. Effigy mounds were sacred land sculptures, usually resembling animals. In indigenous lifeways, through symbology and storytelling, the serpent is a life form that is both revered and threatening, taking shape to warn humanity of the continuum of existence and our role to maintain that balance of our world. Though the cost to build these mounds was much larger than the funds we were awarded from the grant, the partners knew this was something special and we should find other funding to build the mounds. We held ground stomping dedication events at each site to prepare and bless the areas where the mounds would be built and to create awareness for our project. Next slide, please. In August of 2018 at Schiller Woods, these are pictures of the ground stomping ceremony that was held. Next slide, please. And this amazing photo is the ground stomping ceremony that occurred September of 2018 in Horner Park, where over 200 people attended. The partners also held 2 fundraising events in 2018 and 2019 for the project. Next slide, please. Chicago Public Art Group and the American Indian Center looked for different funding entities to help fund the mounds. Heather Miller, AIC's executive director, was able to get funding from the 33rd Ward participatory budget and many other grant awards. These are the organizations that have awarded funds to the project. And without these different organizations, we would not have had the success that we have today. Next slide, please. On October 14th, 2019, Indigenous Peoples Day, we held the ribbon cutting ceremony of the Serpent Mound, Pokto Cinto, or Serpent Twin, the first installation of an effigy mound by Indigenous people since the founding of the United States. Next slide, please. About 400 people attended the celebration, where we introduced the Serpent Mound at Schiller Woods. Eileen Feigl, Forest Preserve of Cook County Deputy Superintendent, opened with a land acknowledgement. There was a site activation by Native American dancers, singers, and drummers. Native Americans brought soil from their tribal lands to add to the mound. And at the canoe site on River Road, everyone was invited to help paint the mound topography on the parking lot, which relates to the Serpent Mound, but do not match each other. Next slide, please. Here's an aerial view of each mound, and you can see the different shapes reacting to each other. This event would not have been successful without the partnership of the Forest Preserve District of Cook County, Jackie Ulrich and her team, volunteers from the Field Museum, and in-kind donations from Midwest Ground Cover, and the other funders listed on the previous slide. Next slide, please. The second year of the Our Great Rivers funding helped the American Indian Center create a curriculum around the mounds and the natural history of the 2 river sites. And it also helped us build another public art site at the Dunning Reed Conservation Area, a 23-acre natural area of wetlands. The partners sent out another RFQ for artists and selected Laura Miracle and Jamie Topper, who worked with the AIC youth to create the design. They built and installed a galvanized steel sculpture that represents a cross-section of a willow, an Erenchyma plant found in wetlands. The sculpture is titled Nesewin, which means to breathe in Anishinaabe, an Ojibwa language. Next slide, please. This year, the committee has some funds to build the Coil Mound in Hornet Park. We're waiting for U.S. Army Corps of Engineers to approve building the mound in the natural area they renovated. The decision will be made this summer after community input. The partners have been lucky to work with Chicago Park District, especially Lauren Umack and Matt Freer, who have helped us navigate through the permitting process. Other than raising extra funds for the mounds, the permitting process has been a challenge. For instance, we originally wanted to build the Serpent Mound near the canoe launch, but it was a floodplain. This brought on more permitting requirements and funding. So we moved it close by to an area that was not on a floodplain, and luckily there was such an area. With patience, flexibility, creativity, perseverance, guidance, and luck, we have been able to find success. Next slide, please. Looking forward to the third year of funding of our Great Rivers Grant, the summer's goals have been impacted by the pandemic. Instead of organizing tours around the Serpent Mound, we will be working on wayfinding, creating signage and a virtual presence by launching a website. In retrospect, creating a better virtual presence should have been done earlier, but better late than never. We will also be raising funds for the Coil Mound. Next summer, we hope to have canoe tours that include augmented reality experiences. Now that the warm weather is upon us, we invite you to go to Schiller Woods West to discover the Serpent Mounds, the mound topography painted on the canoe launch on River Road and Irving Park Road, and to Dunning Reed Conservation Area near Irving Park Road and Oak Park Avenue to check out Nesewin, and also to take a look around the conservation area. Each of these presentations today will show that public art activates, motivates, and supports placemaking and storytelling. Next slide, please. For more information, you can go to AIC or CPAG's website for now, or email Heather Miller or myself. Thank you very much. Next presenting is Grace Chan, Executive Director of Coalition for a Better Chinese American Community. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the presentation, and thank you so much for inviting me. I'm going to talk about the project that Coalition for a Chinese American Community has in cooperation with Pingtom Park Advisory Council on the south branch of the river. Next slide. Pingtom Park is located in Chinatown on the west end of Armour Square, right by the Chicago River. It is a park that is built with the river as its front door in mind. Most parks and locations that are by the river tend to have a river that's towards its back, but landscape architect Ernie Wong has the idea of making the park embrace the river and having the river be a central feature of the park. And this project takes advantage of that landscape and that scenery and build upon it. From the very beginning, we wanted to attract more people to use not just the park itself, but also the waterway. There is some recreation, there's a dragon boat activities. Chinatown Chamber of Commerce hosts a dragon boat festival every summer, but there is not very regular activities, and we want to invite more people to be able to use both the park and the river. Pingtom Park was built in the 2000s, And then about 8 years ago, there's also a field house that's built right north of it. But the river area, the area right by the river, there's still not very much construction. So we wanted to modernize and update the area that's underneath the 18th Street and 18th Street Bridge and the 19th Street corridor. Next slide, please. So you can see the before and after of where the mural area is. And you can see that the wall is in a lot of disrepair, and there's water stains as well as not very attractive. The walls were not very attractive. So the idea was to bring public art into this area to make it more attractive. And both year 1 and year 2 of the Great River Project focused on making public murals as the focal point. So the first mural that you can see is has a Chinese theme that recalls the blue and white ceramics of Ming Dynasty ceramics. And that mural is called All in One, and it was completed in 2017 and with 2018 with 3 artists that were selected to paint the mural under the bridge. Next slide. And the second mural, called Between the Mountain and the Water, has a different kind of Asian theme that is gold and black, and then with colors filled in. For both of these murals, not only were they artist-created projects, they were also community art projects. The artists made tracings of their design and then projected it onto the wall, and teams of volunteers spend an evening tracing the outline of the picture, and then the artist team went in and filled in the details with colors over several weeks. We also had a community poet that captured pictures of both of the murals, and as they were being produced, and she completed an album full of Chinese poems and pictures accompanying both murals. And both murals had grand openings that had more than 200 attendees for the murals. Next slide, please. In addition to the murals, we also wanted to make the river itself more livable and more inviting. And part of the projects also included having dragon boat trainings for amateurs that didn't know what dragon boat may be about or have heard about it and have always wanted to try. And over several weekends, we had folks learn how to row a dragon boat and enjoy being in the river in a different way. And this slide also shows another mural, which is a third mural, which accompanies Between the Mountain and the Water, and with a saying that says, the greatest good is like water, and that accompanies the third mural. So there are 4 supporting walls that support the 18th Street Bridge, and we had beautified 3 of those walls. There's a 4th wall that's very badly water damaged, and that would be a much longer term project to try to get that wall usable and attractive. Next slide. So the Great River Project is the result of planning, community engagement, and fundraising. The Coalition for a Better Chinese American Community is a collective of 14 different organizations, including community-based social services, education institutions, business associations, and faith organizations. We were not community planners. but we all came together to try to do something that's, that would involve the entire community and make it more livable for everyone, and also building on the river as an asset to make the river more attractive and more livable. So the Chinatown, the Great River Project is the result of a long-term Chinatown community vision plan that began in 2013 and was unveiled in 2015, that lays out different components for planning for the community, including education, in parks and recreation, transportation, and a whole host of other aspects. And then following the vision plan, we also had a project on walkability, and most recently we just finished a project on parking management. So all of these planning go together. As part of the last year 2 Great Rivers funding, we also completed a Chinatown wayfinding plan. As you can see, there's a logo that was created that will be the visual representation of Chinatown, and we will have signage that will have that logo all over Chinatown, both pointing to the river and the park, and from the river and the park to the rest of Chinatown, and marking landmarks along the way. And that wayfinding plan was supposed to be unveiled earlier on the spring, but it will be that unveiling has been delayed, and we will be unveiling the wayfinding plan in the fall. Next slide. For year 3, we continue with the plan of making this area more attractive, but also more productive. We will be launching a project with the Chinatown Chamber of Commerce, the Chinatown SSA, the Wandela Water Taxi, and then also with Northern Illinois University as a research partner to measure the economic value of the neighborhood. So the project will include 2 pop-up outdoor events, as well as survey of visitors that come to Chinatown on the water taxi, and to see what the visitor demographics are like, what their spending pattern is like, and what kinds of business activities they conduct, and what they would like to see more of. As the weather gets better, we would invite folks to visit Chinatown. We know that Chinatown has been hard hit in the COVID pandemic, and a lot of the businesses have been suffering since the beginning of this year, since January, and we hope that some of these new project activities would bring some revitalization to the area. Thank you. Next slide. Sorry.
Oh, sorry, Grace. We had a question in the chat box. Would you mind just telling everyone who the mural artists were?
Yes. So the mural artist was Anna Murphy. She's the lead artist, and she had 2 people assisting her. Chester Chow actually participated in both of the projects. We had an RFP in year 1 that invited several different artists to participate, and selected 3. In year 2, we actually invited them to apply as a team, and Anna and Chester applied together so that they were able to continue their work together. Thank you. Next, we have Dr. Brenda Dixon, who's the founder and board president for Major Taylor Trail Keepers, who's going to speak about the Major Taylor Trail project.
Thank you, Grace. Grace has already introduced me, so I will spare going through my role, but I serve on the boards of 3 different organizations. The Friends of the Major Taylor Trail, I'm the advocacy chair for the Major Taylor Cycling Club, Chicago, and then president for the Major Taylor Trail Keepers. We can go ahead and advance to the next. Well, before you advance, this is our final, one of our most proudest works that you see the photograph of on our title slide, the mural on the bridge. But go ahead to the next slide, and I will walk you through the story of how we started and got to where we are today. So I first want to just talk about the geographic location of the Major Taylor Trail. It's one of the few true urban trails. It's named after our country's first, actually the world's first African-American sports hero, right around the turn of the century, when cycling was as popular as basketball and football is today. Cycling was the popular sport, and he won the world championship. This trail is a 7.5-mile trail, and it runs from the Dan Ryan Woods over on the far southwest side, around 87th and Western, to the very end of our city limits and to the Little Calumet River. The bridge, which is also the end of the trail, marks the border between Riverdale and Chicago. The trail is also unique in that there are 3 different jurisdictions that govern or are responsible for the maintenance, upkeep, and development of it. There's the 2 trail ends are managed and governed by the Cook County Forest Reserves. Then up until you get to right around the center, up until 105th through 95th Street, it is governed and managed and maintained by the Chicago Park Districts, who does a phenomenal job of maintaining our trails. And then there's that street portion, about 1.2 miles, right in the center, that is actually on the street and managed and maintained by Chicago Department of Transportation. It goes through 5 different wards and is surrounded by over 200,000 residents, crosses 3 different metro lines and 9 major streets, and connects eventually to the CalSAC Trail, which is why our work is so important. Go to the next slide, please. Next slide, please. Okay, so I want to first talk about what our goals were. But let me just first say that we just had a lot of dreams until we ended up running into Josh from the Metropolitan Planning Council at one of the workshops that they were doing for community input on another project. And so he helped us, with the help of Mike Mancarini from National Park Service, turn our dreams that we had for years about the trail into concrete, tangible goals. One of the goals, which I'll show you before and after pictures a little later in our presentation, was we wanted to get the graffiti off of that bridge that you saw in my title slide. We wanted to get the graffiti off of that bridge because we know that that bridge is going to be a key bridge in many other ways of connecting the Little Calumet, the CalSAC Trail to Chicago. And when people come and enter into Chicago via that trail and they see the unsightly graffiti-filled bridge, it was probably going to be a deterrent for people to not continue on the trail. So that was the first part of the goal, was to let's clean up our neighborhood. And while we're doing it, let's also create something beautiful that would honor the namesake of the trail, Major Taylor. We also had the goal in year 1 of developing a concept landing for a landing for the edge of the river, because currently if you go to the site, you'll see oftentimes children and other pedestrians climbing down onto the dowels, which is very dangerous, but they're doing that because they want to just sit and watch the river, and there is no place to sit and watch the river unless you travel another 1.5 miles away from the community. And then the third one was to host a ribbon cutting festival to unveil the mural and really to bring awareness to the trail. One of the things we realized and discovered is because of how there's the 3 different sections of our trail, many people don't even realize that it's all the same trail. So that was year 1 goals. Year 2 goals was to create a plan for strategically placing locators along the trail, and also create a recognizable look that would distinguish the identity of the trail. So no matter which section of the trail you were on, you knew that you were on the same trail. We knew in order to do that, we needed to have a logo designed for the trail. And then we wanted to be able to guide users to create clear directions for the trail, and again, host another community festival to bring awareness to the trail, as well as be able to raise funds to maintain the upkeep of the mural and make some of our other dreams that we have for the trail come to life. Next slide. Next slide. All right, so we had actually a plethora of partners, and so I organized our partners into two different slides. We had a cadre of partners that supported us with the actual riverfront improvement project, and then if you go to the next slide, we had another cadre of partners that helped us with the actual community event, the unveiling process, and all of them played very key roles. And I can talk about each of them probably for a full 10 minutes. So I want to go ahead on to the next slide and get into the rest of our story to show you it's okay. So in order to get all of this work done, both the creation of the mural as well as the design, the concept for the landing, it was a total community engagement process. We had 4 different meetings that ended up in making sure we had people included from all of the different wards, the town of Riverdale, and the neighborhood called Colonial Village that borders the trail end. And you see photographs of us engaging in either meetings or actually painting part of the mural. Next slide, please. This picture here is what that bridge looked like before this project took place, and I think the pictures tell 1,000 words. It was an eyesore to the community, filled with graffiti, desolate, and just wasn't something that people wanted to really go hang out and stay on for any length of time. And so now, if you click and go to the next slide, you will see this is our after pictures. And you can see the picture in the upper left-hand corner is a picture of the cycling club. They actually used the mural and the bridge as their location for their photo shoot last year. It's a place of pride. It's a gathering space for groups. It's a tourist attraction. We see people posting up pictures of themselves in front of the mural that are from all over the country. It's people that come to Chicago that are cyclists. They're making it a point to go to see the mural and get a picture of themselves there. Next slide. Okay, so I was asked to define or kind of outline what are the lessons that we learned from this project. So I had at our board of directors meeting, I just threw it out there, the question out there, and we came up with 6 key lessons that we learned that were kind of like ahas for us. One of them is that, you know, when we found a funding source, thanks to Josh and the Cyril Foundation and CCT, it brought partners to the table. We had been dreaming and complaining or advocating for years, but when we found our own funding sources, it brought people to the table. We also realized that our community is very eager for this type of development and placemaking. It was amazing how when we would just start up conversations about what we were doing, oh, well, people were eager, how can I help? How can I become a part of it? We also ended up discovering that there are many more like-minded groups in our community than we ever knew existed. We Keep You Rolling was one of the groups that we weren't as familiar with the work that they do. It wasn't a lesson learned, it was an affirmation of something that we always thought and believed, that our community respects development. The mural has been in place for a little over 2 years now, and there's not any graffiti or defacing of the mural at all. And another cliche saying was, if we build it, they will come, because you see the before and after pictures. And then the other lesson would be that community engagement and participation is key to the longevity and respect for any of the projects in our community. So that was a valuable lesson that will stay with us as we continue to move forward with making improvements to the trail. Next slide. Next slide. Hello. Okay. So then I was asked, what are our continuous goals? Well, on this slide, you actually see another one of the products of these year 2 goals. You'll see that now where you see the words in red, Major Taylor with the man and the cyclist. This is now the official logo of the Friends of the Major Taylor organization, and will be adopted by all 3 entities as the official logo for the trail. But our ongoing goals are to just improve the overall conditions for cycling, walking, public transportation, and increase the access to our communities that are on the south side. We're hoping to secure funding to actually get the installation of our signage plans, secure funding to eventually have the landing built, and then secure funding for the other murals that are needed along the trail. In the year 2, the project that one of the pieces of the components of year 2's project was we had an urban planner do a full outline of everything that would be needed to fully bring the 7.5 miles to life. And so several other locations along that 7.5 mile stretch were identified as key targets for a mural to be installed. So those are really our continuous immediate goals. Next slide, or is that, next slide, or is that my last slide? Oh, that was my last slide. All right, I finished in time. Thank you. Thank you so much for that. And I turn this back over to Christina now.
Thanks for wrapping that up, Brenda. Yeah, so thanks to all of our panelists. I think it really shows the amount of work that has gone into creating these beautiful riverfront projects and the activation of our rivers. So I wanted to quickly go over poll results, which I will now attempt to pull up, and then before heading into some Q&A with all the panelists. So if all the panelists could put your videos on and unmute yourself so we can get started. I'm going to share results of the poll right now. I believe everyone can see them. Apparently, most folks currently attending live or recreate near the North Branch of the Chicago River, or do not currently recreate or live near the Chicago River, which is interesting. Most people prefer to walk along the river, but people also really like to bike and dine, drink, and shop near the river. Mm-hmm. I imagine that happens most often on the Riverwalk, but hopefully some other places as well. Unclear river access points seems to be the #1 challenge with having safe and active river uses. Followed pretty closely by unclear ownership about whether or not the rivers are open to the public. Great. So this is all helpful information for us to have as we move forward with continuing to implement the Our Great Rivers vision, because it helps us understand more of how people are using the river and what we would need to focus on for moving projects forward. With that, I'm going to stop sharing the results and launch into questions.
Great. So I was just going to say we had a comment that said, don't let Miss Brenda off the hook without mentioning that the mural won an award at the International Trail Symposium. So congratulations to you. And yes, we want to make sure we highlight that.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. I did forget to mention that it did win an award. Thank you so much.
Okay, great. So first question we have is to everyone. What was the most challenging aspect of your project? How did you manage it? And follow up for what did you learn?
Well, I think I touched upon it by saying that I think for us, the permitting process, because we had different municipalities that we needed to get permitting from. For instance, like as I mentioned in my presentation, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers is federal. The Forest Preserve of Cook County, and of course the Park District is city. And then also Dunning Reed Conservation Area is owned by the state. So just trying to maneuver around who we needed to ask and how we needed to get permission. And thankfully, you know, with MPC's help and guidance, you connected us to the people that we needed to ask. And as I mentioned in my presentation, you know, Lauren Umack, Matt Freer, and some other people that I can't think of right now had helped us along the way. And we're still, and it's a slow process. It's a very slow process. So.
For me, there were a myriad of challenges. But I guess the one that I'll focus on is we, similar to what I believe Mary Rose, or I think Mary Rose had mentioned, we had never done this type of work before. I mean, everyone on our team were all, you know, professionals, well educated in our areas of expertise, but community, this type of work was just not none of us had the appropriate background to do this. How did we overcome those challenges? I'd actually have to just say Mike Mancarini and Josh and Chloe the first year and Christina the second year. I mean, literally, everything from, you know, selecting vendors and just how to organize things came from them. I mean, literally, they held our hand through the entire process. So I would say that was probably our biggest challenge, that as skilled and talented as all of us are, you know, you have Peter Taylor and Ald, who had just been at this from an advocacy and passion perspective for over a decade, but actually implementing this work was new and foreign to us. Now we think we're semi-pros. And then I think the other challenge would be just the pushback that we got. Because it was then, once we felt confident with the support that we were getting through the grant, we felt confident that we could do it, but then convincing our colleagues that yes, we can do this, and we have the support. So that was the second challenge to overcome. So then after we were convinced that we could do it, because we had the support, convincing our colleagues and other club mates that we could do it.
Yeah, just like what Brenda and Mary Rose said, for us also getting the project off the ground at the beginning was a challenge. We had not, as a coalition or even with our coalition partners, none of us really had a background in either urban planning or trying to get projects like this done. Fortunately, we did have a very close relationship with the landscape architect who did design Pingtong Park, and he was a strong supporter of the project and an advisor, and also a liaison with the necessary folks in the city and with other parks and with other park advocates, so that we were able to get it done. We did have vandalism on the first mural. The first mural was actually vandalized not once but twice. It was vandalized, and then we put a protective coating on it, and then it made it easier to wipe off the graffiti. So yeah, so there's a bit of setback there as well.
Can I make a comment?
Oh, sorry, Brenda.
Well, this isn't a challenge, just a comment that I couldn't get into the 10-minute presentation that is, in my opinion, probably one of the most long-standing outcomes of this project is we've now incorporated the organizations into a nonprofit that would not have existed if we had not gone through this process. That now the organization, the 501, the nonprofit organization called Major Taylor Trail Keepers, it's in our mission that we work in sync with the Friends of the Major Taylor Trail and with the Major Taylor Cycling Club. That would not have happened if we had not had the guidance and support that we got from the grant. So it's enabled us to now eventually be able to do these types of things somewhat on our own. We'll still need a little help, but yeah, just wanted to share that success story.
No, it's an important success story. Thanks for that, Brenda. So another question for all the panelists. How many times did people try to discourage you from your vision, and how did you overcome those naysayers?
You know,
Yeah,
I need to say, I don't
yeah,
think
go ahead.
anyone ever said, you know, naysayer. Maybe like, are you taking on too much? You know, like, is this like the mounds? Isn't that a bit much? Because we didn't have all the money. But it's funny when you tell the story, and if people, you know, hear it, and they seem to get really inspired by it. And it really, I don't know, we built one mound. So Heather and I are hoping to build another. And I don't know, maybe Heather could talk more about this question.
We are going to build another one, yes, and we
Okay.
are definitely we are definitely going to build the next one. We are definitely going to find the money. We are definitely going to fundraise for it. It may kill us, but we are going to do it. That mound will be built.
All right.
I think that at this point it is really important for us to think about ways that we do bring other fundraising initiatives into this project. I think it's important to figure out like what next steps look like for all of us, just to keep our communities excited about this work, keep them excited about the river, because no matter what kind of situation the world is in, our river is still here, and like we still need to be providing the needed resources to the area and making sure that all of this work continues to happen, because no matter what, it's not going to stop. So that's kind of where I am with this project, and so we're definitely committed to seeing this happen and making sure that more people get involved and that we continue to share and talk about the great work that's happening for all of our projects.
I think for our project, I think we actually would owe all of our naysayers a loud and noisy thank you, because it was a result of our naysayers that ended up pushing us to. That's actually why we ended up creating the Major Taylor Trail Keepers nonprofit organization. But our naysayers being so close to home really hurt us personally. When you know, and it's always true that it's hardest to get the people closest to you to believe that you can do something that appears impossible. People thought we were nuts, that somebody's going to give you money to get the graffiti off the bridge on the south side of Chicago. Really? Yeah, right. What kind of scam are you running? But that's what made us even more determined. So if our naysayers had not been such advocate naysayers of not believing that the impossible was possible with the support from the right people, we would not be where we are today. We would not have a formal, organization that is headed towards becoming, more independent and able to do this type of advocacy work. So that would be my response to how we overcame the naysayers. It empowered us, it fueled us.
Yeah, just like with Mary Rose, we didn't have a lot of naysayers as people that was just questioning whether the project was too ambitious, in particular because, as I mentioned, that underpass area under the 18th Street Bridge had seen so much water damage that is difficult to maintain. So the question is, why do you want to put murals there if it's just going to be ruined quickly? So after the first mural took a lot longer, both in the RFP process to select the artists and then in the creation. The second one actually took a much shorter time. One, because 2 of the 3 original artists had contributed to the second, or came together to do the second project. So they already had a synergy and they were working much closer together the second time. And for us also, that some of the challenges is to bring the different groups together. The Park Advisory Council was already on board very early on, but other groups that were not as familiar with either the park or the river just took a little longer to want to be part of the project.
All right, so we have about 3 minutes left, but I do want to squeeze in one more question. So think about being brief in your responses. But there's this question about post-COVID-19 and what are people's plans to encourage people to utilize parks, bridges, bike areas, you know, get outside to the riverfront? And I think it's a really relevant question for right now, not even just post COVID-19, but right now during COVID-19. So any thoughts on that?
Yeah, our year 3 project actually had 2 placemaking events, pop-up outdoor dining events at the murals as part of the project, and we have to rethink that to see how that would look. We are already in the Chinatown community. There's already some discussion about whether it doesn't make sense to open up some more of the streets leading up to Pingtown Park for outdoor dining, given that most of the established food establishments are so small that it may just makes more sense to have an open food court kind of concept, that you take a number from a restaurant but sit anywhere else. So there are a lot of thinking that is going on about, you know, how to make these spaces continue to be attractive and safe spaces for people to enjoy.
For us, post-COVID, well, our event that we were planning this year, which is we've all agreed is going to be our annual fundraising event, is it's not postponed. We're changing it to becoming a virtual event this year. But as far as how will we encourage people to come back onto the trail? Well, we have a whole year and a half now to start planning and advocating for next year's event for the trail keepers. And one of the things that we're actually offering as part of swag for signing up for our virtual event is actually those really cool neck gaiters, because they're much easier to breathe through when you're doing physical activity, and it still protects your face from you exposing others to whatever it is you may have. So we designed swag that actually would complement and help reassure people that, you know, hey, we're cautious and cognizant of it. I don't want to speak on behalf of our cycling club, but I will. They have been they've made it very clear with their messaging that we're following the guidance and that we will go back to having organized club rides once it's available. But what our board and our president and club captain have advocated for is go out by yourself and ride. It's just the group riding. So that's how we're still advocating for people to go out, because you can go enjoy the trails, just not in a group the way we normally do.
Great. Sorry we did not get a chance to answer all the questions. There are many good ones still in the chat. I think they'll require more thought. Maybe we can follow up as part of the end of this webinar. So I would like to thank all the speakers. Your work is truly inspirational, and it's been amazing to see and hear how far these projects have come in such a short amount of time. MPC is excited to continue providing support for all of these transformational projects. I'd also like to thank the audience for attending. We hope you enjoyed hearing about all the progress that is occurring on our riverfronts, some of which you might not have known about, being led by community and local groups. I hope this event has inspired you to think about your riverfronts and green spaces that could use a little TLC a little differently, and to see their potential for becoming warm and welcoming spaces. I want to remind everyone that this event was recorded, and we will be sending out a link at a later date. I hope everyone has a good afternoon and evening, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you.